According to Entrepreneur Magazine, there are 12 million businesses up for grabs in 2025 in the United States alone. Are you going to miss out on the silver tsunami? Stay tuned.
I'm David C. Barnett, and you're tuned in to Small Business and Deal Making, the podcast, YouTube channel, and blog where I talk about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses while controlling risk. So if you're looking to take control of your future through buying a business one day, or if you already own a business and you're looking to grow or exit, you've come to the right place. I talk about interesting things, I talk to interesting people, and I answer your questions every week right here. So be sure to hit like and be sure to hit subscribe, and let's get to it. Are you thinking of growing your business or beginning a journey into entrepreneurship? Take a shortcut to success by buying an existing and profitable business the right way. Visit businessbuyeradvantage.com and learn more about my online training, group coaching, and consulting services designed to help you win.
Hey everyone, I'm worried you're going to miss out. So that's why I'm creating a video all about the silver tsunami of baby boomer business owners, in case you haven't heard about it. Okay, so now I said in the opening that Entrepreneur Magazine said that there were 12 million businesses up for grabs. Here's the actual headline. It says, and this is from January 16th. It says, with 12 million baby boomer owned businesses up for grabs in 2025. This silver tsunami is redefining opportunities. Here's how entrepreneurs can capitalize on this generational shift. Exciting, right? I know, it's very exciting. So, what prompted today's video? Well, I was surfing around on the internet and I saw a big social media influencer who talks a lot in the small business space, talking basically on a general uh, investment, personal finance podcast where they were explaining this whole silver tsunami and basically saying that all of these baby boomer owned businesses needed new owners and that there was a huge opportunity in people buying these businesses because obviously a business is something worthwhile that you would want to have, right? And if all the baby boomer businesses go up for sale at the same time, we know from basic supply and demand, economics 101, that this means that the glut of supply of businesses is going to cause the prices to go down, right? This just makes logical sense, right? So, from the point of view of the listeners of this show, many of whom have no business experience at all, for example, they don't really know about business at all. Um, this sounds like an opportunity, right? And it's great because the person, the online influencer, was very gracious in offering to teach people how they can go and buy one of these businesses through some kind of online training. And you know where I'm going with this. So I decided to do some research because this silver tsunami thing, um, I've been talking about it for quite some time. In fact, I went and I looked at my channel, and back in 2019, Mike Finger and I made a video, an interview called Surfing the Silver Tsunami. And it was all about this very topic. And that was 6 years ago. And we were talking about our experience with the silver tsunami at that time, what we were told the silver tsunami was supposed to do, which was to bring all of these businesses up for sale, and the reality that Mike and I were facing at the same time, at that time, of not quite seeing the fact that all business sellers were baby boomers, and questioning some of the narrative of the story. And I just rewatched that video before I hit record here today, and 100% of it is still applicable to this very day. But what's different today is generative AI and the ability to do deep research very easily and quickly. So I decided, hey, maybe I can do some research and actually pull up some stuff and some real statistics to talk about this whole silver tsunami thing from mm, a realistic point of view. So here we go. So here's the hype versus the reality. Okay. So the hype is that millions of baby boomer owned businesses, millions of baby boomers are going to retire, which is true. They're going to retire. And then this means that there's going to be a lot of bargain basement opportunities for buyers for these businesses. And the unspoken assumption, of course, is that these businesses are a worthwhile thing that you would want to own, right? So here's the reality of the world of small business. And I often cite the fact that only 20% of businesses listed on BizBuySell actually are sold. And that comes from some of the regular quarterly reports that BizBuySell puts out on their own. But AI did some more deep research for me and found multiple sources which cite statistics ranging between 15 to 30% of small businesses actually change hands, which would make sense because not every small business actually gets advertised on a business for sale listed website. I personally think the majority of them do not. And that's because you've got internal succession within a family, within a business, the manager decides to buy, there's no broker there. Or the seller maybe does something different, or one of the new options, for example, for selling to employees, maybe they use an employee ownership trust or a worker co-op model, etc. So the percentage of businesses that actually change hands is quite low. Why is this? If businesses are great, profitable, money-making things, the reality is that 70 to 80% of small businesses are not worth owning, and they don't generate more than just a paycheck for their owner, or even less than that. The owners are actually working for a below fair market wage because they want the advantages and freedoms that come from owning their own business. So as a guy who sees financial statements from literally hundreds of different businesses a year, as people engage with us, both buyers and sellers, to look at businesses, when we do our consulting services, I can tell you that's absolutely true. Like, so many of the files we work on, basically the owner of the business is taking what they would have earned if they got a job of similar skill and experience out there working for a big company, right? So when you realize this, it becomes quite clear why such a small proportion of businesses in general actually trade hands in a sale. But let's move on to the next thing, because in addition to whether the business is worth owning, uh, there's the business, and then there's the transaction, and both of these things have to be worthwhile. Like, the business has to be a good, profitable business, but it also has to be ready to be transacted. Like, it's got to be transferable, right? And that requires some work as well. So again, talentcanada.ca is a website that cites a statistic that baby boomers own 62% of the small and medium sized businesses in Canada. And I'm sure the statistics similar to for the US. But only 8.5% have a clear, actionable succession plan, right? So it's a huge disparity, right? Um, Here's one from the Kawartha Credit Union, which is a big credit union in Canada. From their own internal surveys, says that 76% of owners they surveyed plan to exit within the next decade. That's three quarters, right? But between 9 and 10% have an actual plan of how they're going to do it, right? So a lot of this comes down to small business owners being expert at what their business does. So they're good at the product or service that their business does, but they're completely disconnected from the realities of the difficulty of doing a transaction. It's a whole other business, right? That's why the business brokerage industry exists, because they're the experts at that. A lot of these business owners are completely ignorant to the fact that it is difficult to do one of these deals, and that the success rate is highly impacted by the level of preparation that goes into the business. And so, what the belief is from a lot of these business owners who are baby boomers is they just think, hey, uh, when I'm ready to sell, I'll put it up for sale. It'll be sold. And they probably know someone who did that, right? Like, there's always like a nugget of truth in every lie, sort of thing. Well, this is why this myth or this belief persists, because the people who pull it off are very vocal about it, right? Whereas the people who very quietly shut down their business and sell off their assets and close up, they're not very vocal about it. The people who sell tell a lot of stories, they make a big deal out of it. The people who quietly fold up, they do it as quietly as possible, and then they kind of slink away. Like, they don't make a big deal out of it. Um, business close. So they call this the planning gap. People in the exit succession community, they call it the planning gap, and they simply say that many of the firms that could be sold just won't be sold. They'll be shut down or they'll liquidate because they won't be in a position where they can actually make that transfer happen, they won't be able to demonstrate to buyers that it is a good, successful, profitable business because of the way that the seller's been running it, or buyers won't be convinced that they can actually continue the cash flow under their stewardship because they don't see how the sort of the management structures or SOPs or systems or everything have been put in place. They'll see it as being too reliant upon the individual who is currently owning it and managing it, for example. So, business closures. If the silver tsunami baby boomer businesses are not all going to be sold at bargain prices, according to the narrative that's being promoted by people online, then what's going to happen is more of them are going to close, right? Because the baby boomers do, in fact, own a huge chunk of the small businesses, given their age. That makes sense, right? 20 and 30 somethings maybe haven't had a chance to get their business started. Baby boomers own a lot of them. So this is a statistic, again, that comes from Canada, but it says that in October of 2024, the business closure rate climbed to 4.8%, which is higher than the historical average of 4.6%. And one of the largest accounting firms in Canada, MNP, actually is advising of a wave of closures that are going to be coming. And they give this advice to their commercial landlord customers, right? So they're saying if you are in the business of commercial real estate, retail space, industrial space, et cetera, like this is something that we foresee that could impact your planning as far as bringing more space into the market. Um, which I find interesting. Basically, really smart people who study this stuff are warning that the closures of these businesses is actually more of an economic thing than the transfer of the businesses, right? Um, th- that isn't to say it isn't going to be good for business. When these businesses close, their customers are going to have to go someplace else. So the silver tsunami could represent a tremendous opportunity for businesses that are already open competing with them, because as these businesses close down, those customers are going to filter over into other people in that market, and they're going to get their service or product one way or another, right? So the translation here is that the silver tsunami may wash away businesses rather than float them into new hands. And I would agree fully with that, right? Based on what I see in my own practice. Let's talk about the whole idea of the bargain business. Let's talk about market dynamics. So in the United States, Q2 2025, according to BizBuySell, US small business transaction volume dipped 4% year over year, and the median sale price dropped 6%. So, like, that's not a giant discount or anything like that. Um, I would argue that that has more to do with uncertainty around tariffs or recession and all that other kind of jazz going on than it has to do with the number of businesses available for sale. Um, BizBuySell in their most recent report said this: buyers are picky. 73% prioritize recession resistant businesses and 64% focus on service based companies. Why? I'll tell you why. Because service based companies tend to have a lower capex component. And when you are trying to do a highly leveraged transaction, like we often hear about with like an SBA loan, for example, um, they're all based on multiples of STE or EBITDA, which discount and basically remove capital expenditure or depreciation from the calculation. So the only deals that kind of work really well from that LBO leverage buyout kind of perspective are the service businesses that don't have a lot of capex. If you have a lot of big equipment in your business, et cetera, then you have to take into account that capex, and that further moves another whole group of businesses sort of below water. Just look up any video I've done about zombie businesses or dead capital, and you'll get this. So there's a lot of businesses out there where the equipment that they own, if it were to be sold off, would yield more than what the value of their cash flow is, right? And so again, this just reinforces what I've been saying in this video, that there's a lot of businesses out there that are successful for their owners today, the baby boomers, because they built up this capital investment over time. They've paid off their debts, et cetera. They're enjoying a good cash flow. But if you as a buyer came along and actually bought the stuff off of them and then you ran the business and paid the debt, you wouldn't make it, right? So those businesses just don't sell. They close and liquidate. Or They bring in someone into the business as an employee, and they create a very laborious long-term plan with a staged buyout where the new person buys a little bit of equity over the course of many years, et cetera, et cetera. And so they can be sold, but they usually require like a 7-year plan. And again, if the owner of the business is ignorant about the issues regarding this, and they don't actually sit down and create the plan and then find a participant, the counterparty, finding the right buyer and then bring them into the business so they can learn the business and then they can, start this transition process, then it just doesn't happen. And then you end up with an owner who's like 70 years old who just says, I quit, I'm tired, and boom, it's gone. Um, So what is the overall meaning though of the market dynamic thing? It means that good businesses are still hotly pursued. There's no flood of cheap quality deals. So in that interview I did with Mike Finger back in 2019, I believe I said that back in my business broker days, which would be 2009, 2010 during the recession, whenever I put up a good business that was here were the details. I If I put up a business that was open Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, like business hours, and that business has an SDE over 100 grand, I would have 25 inquiries in the first 48 hours, guaranteed, right? And I would probably end up having sit down meetings with 4 or 5 buyers and the seller. There was a huge demand and hunger in the marketplace at that time for any business that was good enough that would really be able to demonstrate that it would provide that cash flow. Now let's inflation adjust those numbers, shall we? So today that would be any business open Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, with an SDE maybe of 250 grand, let's say, to be realistic. Who wouldn't want a business like that? I'd love to have a business like that, right? Now, speaking of $250,000 of SDE, I was on Search Funder the other day, and a young gentleman who was a university student put up a post, and this is a quote. I won't show it because I don't want you to go find the guy on Search Funder. So he says, my plan is to acquire a business with 250 to 700,000 of SDE, and I'm going to pay 3 to 5x and operate it for 3 to 5 years with minimal growth as my base assumption. Then, once I gain sufficient confidence, I'm confident I'm going to hire a manager to take over daily operations and buy another business. Like when I read stuff like this, I think here's somebody who sits in front of their computer consuming this hypey content online, and I know, unfortunately, that this person doesn't realize what they're saying because paying 3x SDE in almost any circumstance I can imagine is way overpaying for a business. SDE includes full time labor, right? So if you paid 3 times SDE for a business with only $250,000 of SDE, for example, then you'd be paying 750 grand for that business. But if your time working every day is worth 100 grand a year, it means now you've got 150 grand left over to take care of the debt service and the capex and the taxes, et cetera. It's basically 5x EBITDA if you know the difference between SDE and EBITDA. And if you don't buy a business. Spend more time on my channel because you do need to know the difference between EBITDA and SDE. I made a video about it a couple of weeks ago. So he's saying 3 to 5x. Well, at 5x, any of these dollar figures, you're just like in nosebleed section of overpayment. These are the kinds of people that are being produced by some of this online content where people are getting everyone hyped up, and they're going out there making ridiculously high offers on businesses, and so none of this jives with the narrative that this flood of baby boomer businesses being sold is going to create a flood of really great profitable businesses available cheap. That's that's what I'm trying to get across to you guys here today. So let's then talk about the next barrier, the barrier of financing. So as you know, people don't typically write a check for buying a business. There's usually some kind of down payment, and then the buyer has to get money from some other place. So in 2025 in the United States, for example, the SBA tightened up the rules with respect to financing for business acquisition. And here's an interesting stat from comes to us from Biz Buy Sell. They do a lot of surveys. They do a quarterly report, which is fantastic because it gives a lot of insight into this market. It says that only 23% of sellers are willing to offer seller financing. And this is a survey question, right? And it says, but 62% of buyers expect it. So there's a mismatch, right? And so even if a business is for sale, structuring the deal can be difficult and require a lot of back and forth. This is one of the key things that I teach in my online course, which you can find out about over at businessbuyeradvantage.com, which is not ten or $12,000. It is less than 10% of that. So uh, yeah, don't be buying any ten or $12,000 courses. So there's a huge mismatch between expectation and understanding. And there are ways to get seller financing from sellers who say they don't want to do it. I've been through literally over 100 negotiations between buyers and sellers. There is a strategy to doing it, and you don't go and meet a seller on the first day and say, "Hey, by the way, will you finance this for me?" That's the equivalent of meeting a stranger on the street and asking them if they will lend you money to buy a car. Literally, they don't know you. They don't know what you've done. They don't know what you're going to do. And now you're asking them to lend you money. So if you are one of the people who's been reaching out to sellers saying, "Hey, will you finance this?" Like, stop it. You don't know what you're doing. And I know that there are people out there teaching that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing you learn how to do in one of these $12,000 courses, which is not the strategy you should be doing. So here's the big takeaways about the whole silver tsunami thing. Yes, more baby boomer businesses are going to hit the market because of the top 5 reasons why a business goes up for sale. Retirement is one of them. Think about that. The top 5 reasons businesses go up for sale: burnout, boredom, and fatigue, divorce, the need to relocate, poor health, retirement. Those are the 5 reasons. Only one of them is retirement. And this is why back in that 2019 video I made with Mike, is that we talked about how the sellers we meet actually come from all age cohorts, not just from the baby boom cohort, right? In fact, somebody who was a really smart, talented business owner who was really good at processes and systems and hiring would never need to sell their business. They would die and still own it because they would retire from the day to day and keep owning it. I mean, a good profitable business is a great cash flowing thing to have. It's a good asset. Why would you want to sell it? The reason people sell small privately controlled businesses is because they can no longer run it and they can't see a way to carry on owning it in a profitable way. So then they sell it, right? This does not mean, because even though there will be more baby boomer businesses coming on the market, it does not mean endless opportunities and a quote unquote buyer's market. It doesn't mean that at all. Why? Because the capacity of strong buyers is practically unlimited, right? There's a someone I work with. He's in the Business Buyer Advantage group coaching program. Very successful operator of a certain kind of business. He's bought like 25 of them, and because he runs them all profitably and successfully, he's got lenders basically saying, "Oh, well, here's more money. Do you want to buy another one? Here's more money." Like, he can just keep buying them, and so when we think about supply and demand, we think about a commodity, right? Like, you think about an item, aluminum canoes. There's a certain supply and a certain demand for aluminum canoes. And once a family owns one, they probably don't want another one. It's not the case with businesses. Profitable cash flowing businesses, if you buy them, you get to make more money. And if you're good at operating them, you can keep buying more. And so this is one of the reasons why this price action. Businesses are not commodities. They're not. They're all individual and unique. Some of them share a lot of characteristics. Um, Most businesses are only going to sell under specific conditions related to that one unique business. Here's the real opportunity. And this is a little bit disappointing because it involves something that people really hate. It involves work. So here's the real opportunity. The real opportunity is for prepared buyers who know exactly what they want. These industry agnostic people, No. You need to know exactly what you want. You get prepared. You can assess the value quickly. You know what you're looking at. And so you know you can make your go, no go decision rather rapidly. And you're ready to act because you have resources lined up and you have your team lined up and a plan lined up for execution. And so the people in my group coaching program, for example, um, there's all kinds of people in there who execute this over and over again. We just had one of our members close a deal in Europe, and it's their second European transaction. It's an American entrepreneur who's done a couple of deals in the US. Now he's buying businesses in Europe. And so, again, he knows what he wants. He's got a very specific list of criteria. He can quickly analyze the businesses to know if it makes sense or not to dive further into them. He makes offers really quickly. And if things line up, then he jumps in with his due diligence. He's now got a team and he's doing these deals and he'll keep doing them, right? As long as the numbers make sense. And so these are the people that you're competing with. So let's get back to that whole thing that I opened with, about somebody online with a lot of hype about this big opportunity in transferring businesses. The reality is that small businesses are one of the riskiest asset classes that there are. It is not like any other kind of investment. If somebody tells you that you can buy a boring business and put a manager in charge, that person is lying to you. I promise you. I've done all kinds of videos about boring businesses and the realities of small business. Buying a business is something for a business person who has experience with business and understands how businesses operate. And they know exactly what they're going to do with the business when they buy it because they have some kind of insider knowledge that gives them insight into what could be done with that business. People who believe I'm just going to buy a business regardless of what it does, the seller will teach me what I need to know. Those are the people that experience the real bumps and bruises. Because, yeah, you will learn. But the question is, can you afford to survive long enough until you learn? And most people get into this whole world of acquisition by trying to leverage themselves to the max. They put their last nickel into a deal and borrow as much as they can. And it means they don't necessarily have the resources available to get through any bumps that might happen in the first couple of years. And that's when you're in your most fragile state. One of the most important bits of advice I give to everybody is make sure you have additional resources outside of what you were putting into the deal so that you can afford to smooth out some bumps in the transition if something really bad goes wrong. Things like losing a big customer, losing a key employee, like the list goes on and on. Like I said, it's the riskiest asset class there is. So if you're serious, if you've got some business background, if you know that this is for you, that you're not, you know, uh, you haven't been led into this space by a Pied Piper, so to speak, then I would encourage you to head over to businessbuyeradvantage.com. It's where you can learn all about the services that we offer to help buyers. And you can learn about the online training, the group coaching program, etc. And if you are a business owner who is one of the people listed here in the statistics who believes they're going to exit in the next 10 years, but has no plan, no idea, etc., we can still help you. Come over to howtosellmyownbusiness.com. There's free resources there that you can download to learn more about what the selling process is really going to entail. And you can prepare yourself starting today by getting us to do an evaluation of your business to show you what it would really sell for. You can't do any kind of exit planning or retirement planning without knowing if the business is saleable and at what price. And with that knowledge and in doing that research, we often point out all kinds of things that can be done in a business to make it better. Most of those things take years to implement, though. And so the earlier you start this by actually getting real insight into your business and what it likely might sell for, the better off you're going to be. So don't shortchange your retirement or shortchange your future or run the risk of being one of these people that has to just close their business because you didn't get properly prepared. And the earlier that you do it, the better, because like we said, when you plan to retire is likely not going to be the time when you put your business up for sale. Top 5 reasons people sell a business, only one of them is retirement. And with that, I'll say thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
So, how can you learn more about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium sized businesses? Easy. Go over to my blog site, davidcbarnett.com, where you can learn more about me and how I work with my clients. You can learn more about my books and courses that I've prepared for you. You can find out how to subscribe to my email list, the YouTube playlists, and more. There's literally hundreds of hours of content there, all for free, and I'd love for you to be my guest. Special thanks go to Mark Willis at Lake Growth Financial, today's video sponsor. Mark helps people better manage their personal and business finances through the Bank on Yourself insurance strategy. This is something I've done personally and I've seen others use it successfully for years. Go to newbankingsolution.com to find all the interviews I've done with Mark and learn more about the advantages of these programs. While there, sign up for a free consultation to learn what this solution might look like for you.